Hey, my friends, it's Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. And right now you're in the middle of something that for some of you is going to be just the coolest. We are having so much fun. It's nerdy. It's technical. We're digging into Bible language stuff to try to make sense of a little Bible riddle we've got going on here in Galatians 4. For others of you, you're going to be like, literally all the other episodes of this podcast are why I like this podcast. How soon will this be over? Well, the answer is I've already recorded it, and it will be over after tomorrow. We're doing a 3-little episode arc here on how you do the work to sort through a question like the one we have in front of us as to what Paul means when he uses the Greek word for element or elemental, as he tells the Galatian church in Galatians 4 that once we were slaves under the elements of the world, but now we are made free in Christ. Well, what does he mean by that? I could have just done all the work real sneaky-like off microphone and then just told you, here's how the things are. But I don't know how the things are. So instead, we're doing this nerd arc together to put our heads together in real time and try to make sense of it ourselves. And we're in conversation number 2 about that right now. I'll have Jeff play some music and we'll pick up right where we left off yesterday. Here we go. Now, look, as much as I'd like to imagine that you and I discovered some new controversy here and we're terribly smart and better than everybody else, the truth is this is not an original question. People have wondered about this for a very long time, and people who were much better at Greek than I will ever be, who lived much closer to this era of Greek than I will ever live, and who were probably way better at being Christians and reading the Bible than I will ever be, they weighed in on this question, and I've gone in preparation for this conversation, I've pulled up a few of the things that some of the ancient church fathers said about this particular passage. Let's start with Marius Victorinus. What an awesome name, by the way. Good heavens. That just sounds like somebody whose character was forged in fire. Then who would be the kind of person, it's like a chill name too. It seems like the kind of person who could whip you in a strategy game, but then turn around and make you ice cream with a smile on his face. Marius Victorinus. I adore that. Mental note about that name. Marius Victorinus writes, "The elements of the world were thought to have in themselves at the same time their own motions, and as it were, certain necessary consequences of the motion of other beings, such as stars, by whose revelation human life was brought under necessity." This guy has read the Timaeus. Isn't that interesting? "And so humans served the elements as the stars ordained and the course of the world required." That's from his epistle to the Galatians. So clearly this Marius fellow, who has a name forged in fire, looks at this passage that we're looking at in Galatians, and he's like, no, the elemental thing, it's there. You're not imagining it. And he's going right back to some of the same stuff that I've kind of teased out a little bit. Let's keep going, though, see what other people think. I've also pulled up a quote from a guy named Ambrosiaster. I want to go down the rabbit hole about this dude. Nobody knows who it actually is. He got his name from Erasmus. Erasmus is like the guy who came right before Martin Luther, like the 1400s. There's this commentary on the letters of Paul from the early days of Christianity that is written, I guess, anonymously, but his ideas kind of sound like Ambrose, I think, and that's why Erasmus, writing maybe 1,000 years after this anonymous commentator on Galatians wrote, I think it's why Erasmus was like, he reminds me of Ambrose. We'll just go with that. At least I think that's the story with this fellow. Whatever the case, here's what he had to say. By the elements, Paul means new moons and the Sabbath. Oh, he's going a different direction. New moons are the lunar days that the Jews observe, while the Sabbath is the day of rest. Therefore, before the promise came, that is the gift of God's grace, and justified believers by purifying them, we were subject, like those who were infants and imperfect, to our fellow servants, as though to custodians. Our pernicious freedom was the matrix of sin. Okay, so this anonymous person we call Ambrosiaster, he isn't tapping into the same elemental theory, although I got to tell you, where was it? I think it was in one of the lexicons. There was a note in there that said some of the church fathers erroneously made this translation error with that stoichion word, and they accidentally associated it with the moon and the stars as opposed to the elements. I don't know where that is. I'm not going to go dig it up again, but I think I have seen somebody suggesting that what we just read from Ambrosiaster is a mistaken use of the word. Here's somebody whose name we do know, a little more reputable. I'm going to read you his thought. This is Jerome. Jerome is the guy who created the Latin Vulgate. He translated the Bible. Just an amazing mega genius. People still depend on his work to this day. He says, Paul has used the name elements of the world for those whom he called tutors and overseers above. Now remember, Jerome's very, very, very good at this language. Like ultra excellent at this language. So if he says that Paul is using the word for elements of the world, Jerome is probably right. So he goes on to say, some hold that these are angels that preside over the four elements, earth, wind, fire, and water. Interesting. Many think that this is the heaven and earth with their inhabitants that are called the elements of the world because the wise Greeks, the barbarians, and the Romans, the dregs of all superstition, venerate the sun, the moon, from which we are liberated by Christ's coming, knowing them to be creatures and not divinities. Others interpret the elements of the world, as stated by Paul, as the law of Moses and the utterances of the prophets, because commencing and setting out with these letters, we imbibe the fear of God, which is the beginning of wisdom. The Mosaic law and the prophets can be taken as the elements of writing, because through them syllables and names are put together, then they are learned not so much for their own sake as for the usefulness to others. So it looks like Jerome has given us three different theories for how people read that turn of a phrase, even in his time. And he was aware of the interpretation of like the moon and the stars being one of them. And it sounds like he's not going to give us the final answer there. I've got a couple more here, but they basically are different people saying the same stuff we've already heard. Those are the basic opinions that I found about what to do with this little turn of a phrase. They all seem to land on the same conclusion. Paul's point is not obscured, but there's acknowledgement that even way back in the day, people put eyes on this stoicheion word, the elements, and their brain went to slightly different places with it. And I find that reassuring that we're not on a fool's errand here as we think it through for ourselves. But with that said and that done, let's get toward landing the plane on this for ourselves. As promised at the front end of this conversation, we have one more day of this nerd Bible study arc that we're doing here. So for some of you, you're thinking, great, mercifully, that will be the end of that. This is heady and not what I'm into. I don't like doing this stuff. I am smart at other things in my life. This isn't my world. I don't do this kind of thing. That's okay. You don't have to do this kind of thing to be good at the Bible or to understand what God is saying. The Bible's meant to be understood. It's meant to be something you have in your hip pocket. This is the kind of rabbit trail I like to go down from time to time. But as I've said already 2 or 3 times in the course of this, as I'm going to say again tomorrow, the meaning of the passage, I think, works really well and is really clear either way. I'm just curious. And this format allows for that curiosity to happen in front of you. And I like that, and so I'm taking advantage of it right now with this little arc. So we'll round all of this stuff out about what Paul means with this use of the word, this turn of the phrase, elemental or elements of the world tomorrow, and then we're pressing forward in Galatians chapter 4 after that. All right, we'll pick up where we left off next time around. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.